and they find that Bernie Sanders kind of embodies a lot of that counter-establishment energy.
Yeah, but he's a total fraud.
Okay, this is an interesting video in this sense. It's a good conversation because we're talking about to three intelligent young men here. This guy was wearing a Tulsi Gabbard shirt, and so I happen to mention that I do like the fact that she is against the war. That's one of the policies she has, against all the foreign wars. So this conversation ensued after we found that common ground there. And it's, you know, you can almost pick apart this mentality of people that gravitate towards, I guess, certain candidates. Gabbard, of course, is going to attract the more intellectual end of the left, as Yang was another one, okay? And then from there you quickly go off the rails into where you run into the deadhead Bernie Sanders and the moronic Hillary Clinton and supporters, and you know, anybody that's following the establishment candidates or the far left, then you find out the quality of their conversational skills drops off dramatically. So I think this video was interesting in that regard. These guys were very well spoken and just intelligent. I mean, you know, ask good questions and were analytical and just all that good stuff. And the converse, I mean, you know, Trump supporters are going to tend to, well, because he's got so many of them, I mean, they're going to get across the board. But then again, you know, conservatives or in general are going to be more independent thinkers than the rest out there. But you know, this proceeded pretty well until this idiot woman rudely busted into the conversation, and immediately the IQ level of everything just dropped, and into the conversation. She does come back about a half hour or so later, and I get in another conversation with her, which I'm going to make another clip of, and you'll see. And again, contrast intelligence. So, you know, what you do, if you like it, you like it. If you care, you share. If you can, you can contribute. There's a shop button and all the other buttons that you can do that with. Subscribe star would be nice. I'd like to see some subscribe star followers. Just a little bit every month, you know, if you can. Okay, let's get into it. I'll catch you on the other side.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, that's the terrific thing about her. Why she's intelligent in other ways. I mean, that's what bugs me about her. The woman is like super intelligent. She's fun to look at. She's got good policies. I like everything that she talks about, except the Green New Deal, global warming crap.
Well, if we pull out of foreign wars, we're going to have to replace the jobs that the military industry will lose afterwards. And I think that redevelopment of energy infrastructure will kind of be the biggest way to pump a huge industrial base into.
Yeah, but there's other ways. There's other things we could do too. I mean, there's other things we could do. I mean, we're talking. One of the things, we're fighting a monster here. I mean, we were talking about about a $4 trillion or more a year industry with the energy industry, and if anything, pardon me, you got to wean yourself off of that,
right?
And to do it all at once would be catastrophic. Plus, here's a good thing. If you haven't watched it, watch the documentary Thrive.
Okay.
You're familiar with Procter & Gamble?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, would be. Foster Gamble, heir to that vast fortune, had an epiphany as a young man. And he says, I'm surrounded by psychopaths. These people are insane. You know, he was groomed to be a top 0.0001% kid, right? So he broke from the elitist agenda, and he made this documentary Thrive. Watch it. One of the very first things he exposes in there is the cover-up of free energy suppression for over 100 years. We have the technology for free energy drawn out of the air.
Sure.
And Nikola Tesla, who was funded by Morgan, went into Morgan with the machine he invented and said, here, this is it.
Wireless energy transmitter,
yeah. And so they destroyed his laboratory and put Tesla into obscurity and covered up all the inventions. So we have that technology. The fact that, that we have it and it's never brought up is why it's crazy to me that people even talk about this stupid Green New Deal.
Just out of curiosity, we don't have much time here, but it seems that we obviously found common ground almost immediately, right? I'm coming from more of a left perspective. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that at any point there could be a unifying message between the two fraction sides of the two parties, or like the Trump wing, let's say the Sanders wing, because logically speaking, they're fighting the same exact battle, trying to get airtime on, a media network. Media networks aren't necessarily supporting them; they're actively slandering them. Yep. Would you ever feel like there could be a unifying message that the two sides of the parties could rally around?
Not coming from the establishment media, for sure.
Of course, but largely speaking.
But I think we are doing it because innately we gravitate towards the truth.
Right.
So I think people understand that we're listening to one another through the social media networks, through the alternative news sites, and we're starting to come to grips with this. There's going to probably, I don't know how it's going to play out. We can only speculate. But Trump was one. He was part of that revolution because he, let's say Bernie Sanders would be their gravity. But I think he's totally screwed up in his approach or his issues, what he wants to do with it. But, people are looking for other than what we've been having because it's corrupt. So Trump was part of that because, I ran into people that were never voted before in their lives. Right. They see, he said, I voted for him just because he's not a politician.
Right.
So I think, Joe the plumber could have ran. So Trump was
There's a very similar sentiment from the Bernie Sanders camp. Exact same, like people who are disillusioned with the establishment system of politics, who don't feel that they've been represented politically in the past. And they find that Bernie Sanders kind of embodies a lot of that counter-establishment energy.
Yeah, but he's a total fraud. The guy, he's a total fraud. He just took 3 private jets 95 miles to the next. So he talks about, worrying about global warming. Yeah, fraud, man. Plus, socialism just doesn't work. I don't care how you square it, what you do with it. Anytime you centralize power, the idea is to break up the governments and give the power back to us.
Well, how do you feel about the point? Sanders obviously addresses this issue of socialism a lot. I personally feel that maybe it's misrepresented in the media again that he's this crazy socialist candidate. In Europe, he'd be more of a moderate politician, right? But Bernie Sanders makes the point that okay, yes, socialism, but the government still behaves in a socialist manner by bailing out, big businesses, by banks, by essentially bankrolling capitalists post-recession.
Oh, indeed. And he's got a good point there. And indeed, some of that should be followed. But his solution to it is to give the government more power, which is exactly the wrong thing to do. What you're doing is you're transferring that power from the corporations to the government. Whoever said the government's not going to be corrupt?
Well, I guess the theory is that corporations will never have the best interest of Joe the plumber at heart, right?
Well, that's why and the only thing wrong here is the laws are not being enforced properly. The laws are there, it's just that they're being selectively enforced.
Yeah, to benefit
Thank you. So if we would just start enforcing the laws properly, again, that we start breaking up, and that giving the states the opportunity to go ahead and decide who they can go after. I said the smaller we can make the governments, the more control we have. Because when we can look our politicians in the eye, when we can walk in the office and say, hey, better do something, as opposed to having to go through layers and layers and layers and layers of government and bureaucracy where it just gets lost. It's a wash thing, it gets lost.
I think the idea is largely to have government focus on things that are net benefits of the population, healthcare, education, and then everything else could be scrapped for all I can.
Well, again, even there, I've talked to numerous. I mean, if you go to the back of this get out of jail free card from Hillary Clinton, good for any crime in the world, as you know. I have over 1,600 videos where I've talked to. Oh, thank you. And I asked practically every healthcare professional, what's the answer? And they say, well, one, the free market is the answer.
Do you feel that the market right now is not free for healthcare professionals?
No, the insurance companies and pharmaceutical companies got them by the throat. So, again, big corporations, dictating. Plus, there were two ways to go with healthcare back in the day when there was holistic to go, which is to go ahead and keep people from getting sick. And then, of course, the other way was, then treat them after they get sick. Well, when big money like the Rockefellers came in and started funding the universities, they said, well, there's no money in keeping people from getting sick. We're going to fund only the other way. And that's what they did. That's why, when I was a young kid, doctors would, 1/3 of their practice would be pro bono. They did away with that because you can't give stuff away. So it all became about the money. So it's always the money, and it's the power. And it's also this. The end game, this is the scary part. This is what part of Yang was bringing up that I like. The powers that be don't need us anymore. The only reason they've kept us around this long is because they needed slave labor. With the advent of AI robotic technology, they don't need us anymore. I asked a Harvard economics professor out here one day, what is AI robotics going to do to the people walking the streets here right now in 10 years? He says, well, 50% of them will be out of work. I said, what are we going to do with all these out of work people? Well, I'm missing a beat. He said, in the past, we've killed you.
So it seems largely speaking, there's a common, I don't want to say enemy, but there's a common oppressive force at the top of the two sides of the market.
That's why you want to watch Thrive, because it shows the powers that be. He guys exposes the very top elites who are on an agenda to reduce the world's population down to 500 million. They want to get rid of us. And the plan is to keep us sick, get us sick, start chaos, open up the borders, bring in a lot of people. There's another thing called Cloward and Pivot. 1964, two political operatives were asked, if you're going to bring down the United States and, democratic nation states, how would you do it? Well, you can't do it militarily, they're too strong. So what you do is you infiltrate their government and their military, and you start little brush fire wars everywhere. And then when you create a lot of refugees and chaos and strife there, you play on the guilt of the countries that started those. You open up the borders to them. You allow them to flood into the country, and you overwhelm the welfare system, and you bring down the countries from the inside economically. Sound familiar? It's exactly what they're doing in Europe. It's exactly what they're doing here. So that's called Cloward and Pivot. That's part of the elite's program to bring us down. They're working on us on several sides. Keep us sick, open up the borders, problem, reaction, solution. We create the problem, You wait for the reaction. You come with a solution.
So who's the elite?
Well, the elite, I'd start with at the very pinnacle would be the international bankers.
So do you find that it's more of like a smoky room where it's a set group of individuals who are consistently making plans together, or it's just more of a natural occurring
I
phenomenon?
think it's a bloodline of psychopaths. You know, people that for probably 1,500 years or more were ruthless and grabbed a hold of the world's resources and are clever enough to go ahead and manipulate us. Because what does it take? It doesn't take that much to manipulate people. I mean, if you take a sales course, you know what hot buttons to
Well, out of
push.
curiosity, how do you kind of look at Trump as independent of that sort of force if he's very much the embodiment of the privileged elite?
Oh, he's a pimple on a flea's ass compared to the people we're talking about.
Of course, but he's not.
I mean, he's nowhere near as we're talking about the Rockefellers, the Chiefs, the Mellons. We're talking about people that have ruled the world's wealth and industries with spanning boundaries.
But isn't he more inclined to protect their interests versus the interests of the common?
No, again, he's a businessman. Remember, he actually gets down there. You're not going to find a Mellon or a Rockefeller getting and putting on a hard hat, and actually getting down to work.
Of course, but he's also not like a businessman where he'd find New Orleans. He had startup investment from his family of millions of dollars to get him off the ground.
Yeah, but it's silly. How many people have lost that? He worked. He actually worked and did it. And I mean, I just spoke to him. It's a big black guy, right?
Yeah, I didn't really try to.
Came out, hey, what do you do? He goes, I work in real estate, and I'm working with Trump's investment zones right now, economic investment zones. I go, really? Yeah, and I'm working with the guy who's Gibson, who's working to replace Cuomo in New York for governor. I said, terrific, man. I said, so we got that. I said, how's it working? He says, Trump has put billions of dollars into the black economic zones. My job is to go out there, educate the people that this money is there to do it. I have spoken to I actually spoke to one of Trump's bodyguards yesterday.
Oh, shit.
I've spoke to a couple of his Secret Service agents, people that have worked for him, you name it, in all capacities. Ran into him just socially. There has not been one single instance where they told me a bad story about the guy. Said he goes out of his way to help. The Secret Service agent said that Hillary barely talked to us. She barely tolerated us. It was a punishment to be in her detail. Trump came in the first day, called us all in separately, sat us down, said, if you got any problems, I can help you with, because I want you concentrating on your job, protecting me. What can I do? Really? So, and he greets them every day. I asked the guy yesterday, I said, is this all true what I'm saying? I've heard this before. And he says, yeah. The guy's personable. He greets us. He treats us like a real, So he's a real person. He really cares. Remember, he didn't have to do this. He was a billionaire. He was living the life. He didn't have to do this. He didn't have to subject his family to all this crap. Look at that. They always judge a guy, too, by the enemies he has. Who was it? How many enemies? His own party was against him. The entire media was against him. The Silicon Valley was against him.
Again, sounds a lot like Sanders. Right?
The entertainment industry was against him. And
But listen, honestly, you think it's okay for the President of the United States for a picture like that? I think that's wrong. Not only do I think it's wrong, I think it's shameful.
Are you offended? Nobody cares.
I'm offended.
And nobody cares.
Well, yes, they do.
Well, that's tough.
Well, you don't.
Here's a good solution to that. You can walk away.
Ooh, you're getting all upset.
No, I'm not. I'm just telling you what you can do.
No.
I can't do anything about your feelings, honey.
It's like our country is going to turn into a banana republic. It's going to turn into...
You'll have to excuse me. I was talking real issues with these gentlemen. We weren't talking about style or bullshit.
I'm allowed to talk. It's a free
but you're not
country.
talking anything no one gives a shit about.
Listen.
Hey,
I'm allowed to talk.
All right, brother. Hey, it was a real pleasure talking to you guys.
2020,
All right.
I'm allowed allowed to talk,
Yeah.
and you don't like talking to people who don't have your opinion.
Ma'am, I was just talking to two guys. Did you see his shirt? He was a Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders, and we were talking about real issues,
Well, he was
not about
bored.
bullshit style things.
He was bored with what you were talking about. So
You don't know he was not bored. We're actually
he was
tore.
falling asleep with what you were talking about.
So you're a mind reader too.
I am, yeah.
Yeah, you are.
So what'd you think about those guys? Was I right on them? Oh, they asked me to, they came back after they left, and they came back and asked, because they were cognizant of the facial recognition and everything that's coming on in the internet, that they asked me to hide their identities. And because they were polite gentlemen, I obliged them. So that's the reason I covered up their identity there. So thanks for stopping by. Remember, support me if you can. And if you can't do anything else, if you can do everything else, still pray for me. I'll return the favor. See you on the streets.